I love the hell out of that. And I actually liked like the rebrand. I know a lot of people didn't. I liked it. Mm-hmm. But if it doesn't resonate with your core audience, then you're up Schitt's Creek. Yeah. And then I think you're also seeing a similar thing, and we've mentioned this before with Nick when he moved Wawense to Wiseman over to My Father. Now it's starting to like get its legs now a little bit. Yeah. But it was tough because you have so many years of kind of this sense memory of attaching it to a certain look and style and we all know customers, you change one letter on a band, the blend is different, it's not aged anymore, it becomes a whole thing. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I am not alone this week, and no, Chris did not morph into a handsome Cincinnati native. No, instead today we are joined by our good friend, and one of the first guests on the first incarnation of the Long Ash podcast, Mr. Miguel Schoedel from Crown Heads. Thank you for joining. Third or fourth time, and man. John still hasn't been here.
I know. I'm going to have to bring a cutout or something of John, you know.
I'm going to him because I have an event in Nashville in August, and I'm going to go the day before, and I'm going to get on the Talking Heads.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to be on your show before you're on mine, and I'm one of the longest running in the business.
Yes, that is awesome.
Awesome. I'm excited. I mean, I love getting to hang out with you guys.
When was the last time you were in Nashville?
Probably when we did the second launch of Mother Church. So that must have been July of 22.
Okay, we've remodeled the office a little bit. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, nice. It'll be a little different,
No, and he's like, I have the video team come in. I'm like, you have a team?
Yeah.
I'm like, I got two guys. One of them isn't even here.
Listen, John's doing it big, man. He's doing it big.
Well, John, he's when he chooses to be, because I know he likes to be. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tease him a little bit, like the artist in the cave. I just want to do my art. Yeah. But like, dude, when you actually go out and do the thing, you're exceptionally good at it. Like, you're very, very good at it.
Back in the day, in our previous life, when we were all at CAO, John did a tour of events called the Rock and Roll Tour. Mm-hmm. And I remember John and I did quite a bit of events together. We were in Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, Columbus, Ohio. Phenomenal. People loved talking to John, not just about cigars, but tattoos and creativity. And so those are things that I think people really kind of connect with. Whoever it is in the industry that have been around a long time, there's a lot of great stories to share.
Exactly.
And maybe to them, to John, it's like, oh, yeah, man, these are just things that have happened. But if you're a consumer, especially if you've gotten into this in the last 10 years, these stories they want to hear about. They want to know about what was the industry like 10, 15, 20 years ago. John came up, in the 90s in this business. He saw the boom. He saw a little bit of the crash in the late 90s and then the resurgence in the 2000s. So there's a lot of great stories that people like John, or whoever been around a long time. This is my 22nd year, I think, in the business. I was just up in Pittsburgh with one of my reps, and we were in a shop, and we were just talking old stories. And guys that are new to cigars, they want to know about this stuff. You know what I mean? What was it like? What were the ads like? What was the industry like? What were events like? And I think sometimes we forget about that. But it's great to share those experiences with people.
Yeah, it really is. And I came up, like, obviously I started in 2010 in the store, so it was well past the boom, but the boom brands and like that style of industry was still very much the dominant style.
Yep.
I got to see, even in my store time, like that early transition into what it's becoming today. I mean, at that point, Tatuaje had only been around 6 years. Yep. You guys were around, I think you started in
2011.
2011. So you weren't even here.
Yep.
We
were still at CAO.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Nick was still at Drew. I don't even
Sacco
think
was still at
Sacco
Drew.
was still at Drew. And so I got to, I have a little bit of, I got to see a semblance of like the brands that were big. And that's what I because I didn't know a lot of people back then, but I remember the brands, and I love talking about like the old brands. I love talking about with the old CAOs. I loved the Bahia.
Yeah. Bahia was John and I talk about 90s. Bahia was one of those great cigars. out of Costa Rica, and now you've got more cigars coming out of Costa Rica, Doug Douglas, and there's so many my buddy Jack Tarano works for Espinosa, right? Eric was a broker, right?
Yeah.
He was a broker for guys like Rocky and Drew, and then you talk to people like, oh, they have in-house reps. Well, at one time they were using brokers.
Right.
And then you see a guy like Eric who went from, being a broker to being a brand owner and having a very successful brand.
Yeah.
I remember going to a cigar event a long time ago, Tropical Tobacco. Pepin was the guest roller.
Oh, yeah. So this must have been in 2006, 5, something like that.
But I think I'm going to say 2005. I could be wrong. But now, he went from the rolling table to being a massive, huge, popular brand. So it's incredible to see the industry. The industry has not changed much.
Right.
The product has not changed.
Right.
But the people that have come and gone, the people that have grown in the industry, and if you're around for a while, it's very exciting to see that,
It's that generation that kind of, and you see it, in a lot of industries, but they had their come up during what was seen as the golden days or whatever.
Yeah.
But they also saw the mistakes. I'm sure there was some aggravation in hey, we want to do this kind of crazy thing or whatever. I'm sure when Pete first started, the initial Tatuajes were obviously a little more conservative in their appearance, but when he first started wanting to do them, I'm sure there was a lot of pushback just by the industry or by retailers, we don't really want to do that kind of stuff.
Well, look, I remember being, at the trade shows and I don't know if Tatuaje had a booth at that time, but Pete and John are good friends, and I remember looking at those two guys. They were all tattooed up, John and Pete, and that was not the norm back then. It was not the norm back then. You had tattoos, you kind of covered them up at the trade show, and so we've seen the industry change, always for the better,
right?
And obviously the industry as a whole is quite healthy. I do events all over the country, meeting people that are, hey, I just got into cigars the last couple of years. I want to learn. And to be a consumer today where, maybe back then for you to meet a John or someone like that, you'd had to go to an event. Now you can reach out to them on Instagram directly.
And John will answer. In fact, I want everyone out there to message John today.
The Crowned Heads on Instagram.
Message at The Crowned Head. Ask him any question you want. He's got plenty of time.
And, it's a different world. And to see people, the 80s were rough for the cigar industry. The guys that were around in the 80s that really kept the light burning for what came in the 90s. And, La Gloria Cubana went from a kind of a Florida brand to a national brand to being bought by General. It's amazing. To see where everything has gone. A guy like Pete who ran Grand Havana Room and then created his own brand, but then also teamed up with you guys for a cigar.
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was a Henry Clay.
It was a Henry Clay tattoo.
John at CAO, he did so much work at CAO, but I remember he had his hands really involved with La Traviata, which was one of the last cigars that we did. And
I remember the jars.
Yeah. John was picking out, back then even it was 660s were kind of the in thing, right? John picked out a Corona Gorda and sizes that were not as popular. So, in a sense, John was kind of way ahead of the game on this creativity part, and that led, obviously, into all the things that he's done at Crowned Heads. And Crowned Heads, again, founded in 2011, but when you look at how many companies have come and gone since then, and Crowned Heads has continued to just grow its footprint, its team. Right. It's pretty exciting to be a part of and to see it all.
Yeah, and it's cool that, two things. One, I agree with what you said in terms of it's changed a lot and mostly for the good.
Yep.
Because, listen, I think that can be said for any industry, that there's always going to be change, evolution, modernization.
Yep.
And when there's changes that are not for the good, they eventually go away. The industry will react to that and be like, this is not how we want to do things.
Right.
So it's always kind of like self-correcting.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is you look at, the bigger brands are always going to be the bigger brands. Your Altadis, your General, your Oliva, your Perdomo, your Drew.
Which have such a key role to play in our industry.
Exactly. But when you look at, that next tier, and the guys that are, they're far beyond up and coming. They are solidified as already legends. You look at John, you look at Pete, you look at Nick.
Yep.
Almost all those guys they didn't just like decide to become a cigar brand owner. There are companies that, you know, they came from some other field and decided to want to do this. But listen, sometimes that works out. Like Rocky, Renier with HVC. I mean, he's from Cuba, but he was like a scientist. He like studied at like University of Michigan, like agriculture or something.
Right.
But when you look at Steve, John, Pete, Nick, they all had a very long history in the industry before they even. I mean, Steve was one of the first guys like doing like touristy trips to cigar factories in the 90s. Like before there was even roads built in Esteli, he was going down there to see what was going on. You know, Nick worked at a small shop in Connecticut. Then I think when he was in Italy, he like worked at like a pipe shop. Then he obviously worked for Drew. John worked for CAO. You worked for CAO. You know, like there's these legacies where it's like, well, we know the basis. We know the foundation of what makes these things special. But now we get to put our own unique spin on it, which I like that it kind of keeps the lineage together. Because sometimes you see an industry grow and blow up, and then there's a lot. How many guys like, you know, got into bourbon or beer just because they saw it's growing? I'm just going to make a bourbon brand. I'm just going to make a beer brand. And some of those survive. Some of them don't. Cigars, very rarely do the guys who like they don't have a connection to this industry, do they survive? Like I said, it's very self-correcting. Like we know that you're not serious. We know that you're not one of us.
There's a sense of paying your dues in the business, and that's where I think the story of, you know, when Tim Osgener gets out there and he's talking about Oz Family Cigars, he's talking about Crowned Heads. You know, and people will say, well, you know, how did you get in? I mean, Tim was born into the business. You know, his father had CAO Pipe Company. And then, you know, take a guy like John. John's story really resonates with me because John was a guy who was just obsessed with cigars. And happened to go from California to Nashville, found out that CAO was based in Nashville, and John applied for a job. And he went from shipping manager to being brand manager, lifestyle manager, creating, designing. I give him a lot of credit for, you know, the hats in our business. I mean, I remember seeing cigar brand hats in the late 90s. They were horrible.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Horrible. And John really kind of raised the bar on that, and I think he continues to do that to this day. It's trying to give more to the industry than you take. That whenever I have the pleasure to do podcasts or interviews, people always ask, and I always say that, look, if you're in this industry, either you're born into it or you come into it. Try to give more to the industry than you take. If you're just there to make a quick dollar, you're going to get weeded out sooner or later. It happens. But when you're in, you pay your dues. Nick's a great example. Steve's another example. When you see the success of John, Steve, and Nick, and obviously there's a lot more, right? You say, wow, it looks like kind of overnight success. But in reality, the road that they had to pave to get there, and I think that really resonates with people because you are competing with legendary brands that have the right to have. Monte Cristo is a perfect example. What an incredible legacy of that brand, from the Menendez family in Cuba to them leaving Cuba, Benji Menendez, keeping that brand alive. What Altadis has done to continue to grow that brand and for people to see that brand. You know, I think it's incredible. I was just telling a story the other day about, you know, so many of these names that come in our industry, because I love, why does a cigar have a name? Why did you give it that name? And a guy like John, I get to be in the front line and get to talk to him and say, "Oh, you created a cigar Broadway. What inspired you, John?" Because I want to share that story with people. And Monte Cristo, you know, the lectors reading books to
with Romeo.
Sancho Panza was a character in Don Quixote.
I was just thinking of Don Quixote the other day. I was in Manila Macho when I was in high school.
Oh, were you? Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was just background in that.
You know, I mean, but you know, all of these Punch, you know, that came from reading the lectors, and that was a place and time. Right? And those brands have continued to grow and to exist. And when you see brands today, they're adding to that legacy. And can you add more than you take to the business that you're in? I think that's a true measure of someone like Ernesto Perez Carrillo, who has definitely given so much of his life to this incredible industry, has gone from the rough 80s trying to stay in business to the boom of the 90s to everything that he's come to today. Reinvented himself with EPC cigars, It's exciting to see where the industry is. And obviously you with this podcast and in your position, you've got a front row seat to the industry changing and growing, and it's very exciting to be a part of it.
It is, and I like the fact that you mentioned paying your dues. It's not necessarily like like there's a hazing or like you have to do this, but it comes down to ultimately you're not going to be successful unless you've kind of I don't want to say been through the ringer, but you've been through the steps, because that's what's going to lead you to success.
Right.
I started in the store, so I know retail.
Yep.
I started doing the social media, so I had customer outreach. I knew what they reacted to. I knew what they enjoyed.
Yep.
And then when it got to kind of the brand management part, I was able to take just my, at that point, 10 years of experience and be like, all right, well, I know that cigars from this factory are very popular. And you build on that experience to success. That's why it's incredibly difficult, some would say almost impossible, for a guy to just come in like, hey, I just like cigars.
Yep.
Let me, and even if you look at somebody like Rocky, he was a cigar smoker, but he was in the 90s.
He was a lawyer.
He was an entertainment lawyer, I believe.
Yep.
And at first, he kind of just like built this brand. It was like a time where like a lot of cigar brands were being built.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, if you look at the cigars that Rocky's making now, night and day. I think a lot of people would agree, tremendously like improved. Yeah. But he got to where he is now because of the years of like different factories, other people making it. Like he started a brand, but if Rocky didn't learn, if he didn't evolve, he would have never made it out of the 90s.
Yeah, and a big part of that, he created a brand called Indian Tobacco. Obviously, it had that motorcycle, brand name to it, and a lot of trial and error up to that point. And then he wound up putting his own name on a cigar. If he would have started with his name on a cigar, who knows if he would have ever made it where he is today.
Exactly.
He had to kind of learn through that. People had to trust him. Okay, this guy is around. This guy is really cares about this business. And then that's why I think when he put his name on the brand, it was a huge success for him, because people had saw the 300 days on the road.
Right.
I remember going to Indian Tobacco events with Rocky, you know what I mean? And seeing him at events in the late 90s. And, hey, buy my cigar, try my cigar. And the success of so many of these guys, and Rocky spends a lot of time in D.C. Mike Condor, who was our, one of Tim Osgoner and Tim Osgoner's and Tim and John's business partner, just retired, but he spent a ton of time in D.C. So these guys are not only creating great products and finding new ways to grow the enthusiasm for our business, but they're also on the front line of defending our rights to smoke.
Industry,
And I think all of that goes into saying that if you want to be a part of this absolute incredible industry, give more than you take.
Exactly.
And I think that's incredible.
I agree with that. And listen, to build a brand is, I don't want to say art form, because that sounds to me that's kind of like douchey, but there's a mixture of, you need an immense amount of creativity, common sense, and there's almost like an equation to it as well. Mm-hmm. So, when I'm working on something, and I have the pleasure of getting to work on a lot of kind of like benched AUSA brands. Like obviously get to do cool stuff with like Romeo and Monty, but where we're really looking to shine is like they have these brands with like this, kind of base heritage on them, but just haven't been big the past couple of years. Yeah. But there's an art form in knowing like, all right, so people have knowledge of this brand. So, all right, so that's a good start. What's the best way to, I don't want to say exploit, but utilize that? All right, we can't make the jump where like this was like an average brand in the 2000s, and so now even if it's worth it, we can't make this $20.
Right.
We can't.
Right.
You can put the nicest band and call it the nicest thing and have Padron make it for you.
Yep.
It's not going to connect. So every little thing comes into play when building a brand. The price, the look, what is your purpose for it? Like, is it just a cigar like that you want to put out? And I'll be honest, it's exhausting.
Of course,
it's exhausting.
Yeah.
But when you truly get there and you see something like, Mil Diaz that took, 1,000 days to kind of develop.
Yep.
When you look at Tennessee Waltz, which is becoming, this is like your guys' bestseller, and you release it.
At one time, that was strictly for retailers in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Now it's all over the country.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that one it's a plain slide top box, orange footband, nothing else.
Yep.
Sometimes it's luck, and sometimes it's just like, I don't know, man, we have magic here, and it's interesting to see. You can never fully guess the reaction of the audience. Yeah. But you have to kind of use your experience to guide you along what you think is the best route. John knows when he's making something like, Broadway, for example. He knows, all right, this is what I want to do with it. Because it's a brand new brand and because of how I want to advertise it and where I want it to fit in my portfolio, I'm not going to price it like I price La Vereda. And I actually think pricing is an important fact because I've had a ton of cigars and I'm like, hey, this is great at $8.
Yeah.
This company's selling it for $19.
Yeah.
But at $8, this would sell at and it does bother me that I'm like, sometimes people get greedy or they overestimate. And what I love about Crown Heads and other companies like it is they release cigars in the exact right way each time.
Mm-hmm.
Like La Vereda, $20. You can smoke that. You see the packaging. You hear the story. Like, yes, I see why this is in a different tier. Broadway or Four Kicks, I see why it's being done this way.
Right.
And that's one of the most difficult things to do. Anyone can put a cool band on something and get a good factory to make you a good cigar.
Yeah.
But it's telling the whole story through the branding, through the bands, through the activations and the events, through the pricing, through the GWPs, what kind of cutters and lighters are you kind of putting with it.
Yep.
That all is what tells the full story. So it's exhausting.
And working with the right tobacco and working with the right people that can work with that tobacco. I always say you can have the best ingredients in the world.
Right.
There's a show on the Food Network, America's Worst Cooks or something like that, right? You can give them a filet mignon, but they're horrible cooks.
Right.
They're going to ruin it. Same thing with tobacco. Great tobacco in the wrong hands is a bad cigar.
Right.
Great tobacco in the right hands can be a great cigar.
Right.
And
even average tobacco in the right hands
100%
could be a good cigar.
100%. And all of that goes into creating new brands. And there's a lot of new brands that are launched every year. And we see, how many brands truly become a legacy brand or blend, know. And those are things that sometimes you don't have control over. Sometimes the industry just as a whole takes on a particular brand or a blend and makes it what it is. I think Rocky with Edge, Tatuaje with the original brown label, when we were at CAO, the Brasilia, all those kind of brands took a life of their own. Mil Diaz has taken a life of its own. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things, Juarez for us has become this tremendous success. And you obviously, guys like John will only put out things that they truly are passionate about and work hard on.
Right.
But when it's in the hands of the consumer, they're ultimately going to decide if this cigar is worth smoking. Now, not just worth dollar-wise, but worth their time in searching out, finding, and smoking. And obviously the retailers supporting particular brands, people they like to work with, people that support them, people that are doing good by the industry. So there's so much that goes into it. I think when a consumer walks in and grabs a cigar off the shelf, I always think to myself, man, how much work has gone to get that from seed to actual smoke and all the things in between. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And people will say, oh, do you have any? People always want to ask me, what cigar don't you like? I always say, man, most cigars there is a market for. Right. Most cigars are created for a particular reason. It's hard to hate on a cigar when you know all the hard work and tremendous amount of effort that goes into making a cigar. Ultimately, what makes a cigar successful can be completely out of your hands.
Exactly. And listen, I only really see my half of the equation in terms of the logistics and just the work to get something from A to B. So, I have to make codes and make sure that the bands are right and to get the UPC, and just that is an extensive amount of work to because again, it's not just about we have a great cigar with a great story. It's all right, but you got to get this to market. There's a lot of nuanced moves you have to make sure it's at a certain level. And I don't even get to really see the factory portion of that.
Yeah.
Maintaining inventory, just send me some samples. All right, I have to go and find this. I have to roll it. I have to make sure it's up to a certain quality. So you're right, to get it from the idea phase to in a store in your hands.
Yeah.
It is incredibly time consuming. I think most people will think to create a good cigar brand, maybe you need 8 months.
Yeah.
Try well over a year.
Yeah.
If you guys wanted to launch something at 2026 trade show,
It's been done working.
Yeah, like you need to have the blend finalized already and production on the cigar started, so that at least the cigars can sit. And then you have to be right now in the phase of finalizing packaging. That's where you have to be if you want to release it next April. So I hope customers, and I know most of them do, appreciate, and that's why I don't like negative reviews on cigars. And I'm not trying to be some kind of hippie, like, oh, we should all live in peace, man. You don't like something. If somebody asked me personally, do you like the cigar? I would say, maybe it's not for me. But the publication of like bad cigar reviews, if you smoke something and it's not good, just don't post about it. Like that's what we always do when I had to do all the cigar reviews for like our website, or like when we had our top fives and everything. People are like, oh, like what cigars do you not like? I'm like, well, if it's not on my top 5 lists, I probably don't enjoy it. Like I'm only advertising the cigars that I enjoy. So that's your hint as to like where I'm trying to guide you. Because even a bad cigar, it took somebody a pain in the ass amount of time to get that to market, and whether it hits your palate or not. I keep Reddit and they're talking shit. I'm like, I mean, that's just Reddit. But like, do you have any idea? There's a guy like me in an office somewhere who broke his hump for 9 months to get this, a Minso certificate in Nicaragua to get this thing to you. Oh, it smoked like shit. I'm like, oh, sorry.
Or I see a bad review and it's by a factory and I know the factory and I go, man, that guy would have to go out of his way to make a bad cigar.
Right.
And then you see another publication give it an incredible rating, and I think to myself, the consistency in rating is so tough.
It is.
You and I go to a restaurant, you're going to order something completely different than I order because we have 2 different palates.
Exactly.
And we're supposed to be reviewing the same cigars. That's a tough, I always tell people, consumers I meet, oh, what do you think about ratings? I go, look, man, you gotta find, if you want to read ratings and you want to read reviews, you got to find a reviewer who has a palate similar to yours.
Find a page, try out their high-rated stuff, and 100%. If you like it, keep going. If you don't, you're not going to like what else I recommend. No,
I mean, if a person is so anti-Connecticut and you love Connecticut's, that person's never going to give a Connecticut a good rating.
Right.
And Connecticut's are still the #1 selling cigars in this business. So or if you hate full-bodied cigars and the reviewer is into the full-bodied, robust, heavy cigar, you're not going to like their reviews, man.
Right.
So it's trying to find the right person that can suggest to you. You know what I mean? It's like anything else. Shoes, cars, anything. If you're going to read reviews on something,
you got to make sure that you're in line. That's why I always I might make fun of Half Wheel sometimes. I feel like they get really, really into the review portion. But the consensus, I always feel like this is an amalgamation. Enough people of various backgrounds and various palates agreed that these are the best from this year. And everything's included on it. I mean, there's
the consensus.
There'll be,
you know about the consensus. The consensus. I think the consensus is fantastic.
There'll be cigars on there I have literally never heard of, and I have to be in the top 10% of brand knowledgeable people in the industry. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I'll see, and it's also cool when you get to discover new cigars that way. I discovered that's how I first discovered like the street taco, like the barbacoa and that kind of stuff. It's like the Rojas. And now they've become a favorite of mine. But I want to get into the big news with you guys this year. Well, there's kind of 3 news stories, 2 new releases. Which I want to touch on. I'm smoking one right now. But you guys unveiled your new rebrand strategy this year that will eventually take over kind of all of Crown Heads, but for now is starting with 4 key brands. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what went into that and why you picked the 4 brands you did to kind of start this off?
I think as you start as a boutique brand, as we did in 2011, now we came from a very successful run from CAO 1968. Sold it in 07, but we continued to run it until 2010. So 2011, we kind of started from scratch, right? And when you're a small boutique brand starting, I think you can create a lot of different brands and blends, different styles, different images. But once you grow to a certain point, next thing you know, you have a huge representation in the vast majority of retailers in the U.S. There's something that needs to bring them together. Right. And I think Oliva went through it, Perdomo went through it, Rocky went through it. All of the companies eventually hit that mark, Alec Bradley, where you need something to kind of bring them all together.
Right.
And our new band that John worked very hard on, is, I think it is the truly the crown for crown heads now. It is a way to identify our product in any humidor across the country. It has our hero logo in the middle, the CH. We've always had a CH logo, but this one's a little bit more updated. It has the crown on it. The sides of the bands will be distinct to the particular brand. So it's not one, we could have just done one master band and then done different secondary bands to identify. And we didn't want to go that way. We wanted each brand to maintain some of its uniqueness and culture that we've created around it. And so on the Broadway, there are 3 stars. Obviously, Broadway, Broadway Street, and Nashville, Broadleaf. So there's kind of a double.
Yeah, John is
there.
Not into theater in New York. That's not what this is about. He's not doing My Fair Lady here.
And the three stars represent Tennessee. So it's kind of a Tennessee kind of a feel to it because of the Broadway name, right? Mil Diaz has that signature M on the side, the crown from Periiosa on the side. Those, I think, and they maintain their color, they're unique and different. So they all have a unifying logo, but yet they're still maintaining their uniqueness and difference.
Right.
The secondary band will have crown heads and gold embossed, and then below it will have the brand name. So this is something we're very proud of. Obviously, it started with Broadway because it's our newest brand that we've put out. This is a core brand that we've launched that will hit shelves very, very soon, if not already. And we've done it with Periiosa, which is a cigar that Don Pepe Garcia from the My Father Cigar Factory makes for us. Full-bodied, robust, has a beautiful Ecuador Oscuro wrapper.
That brand, I'm telling you, I'm going to tell you why it pisses me off. Because, first of all, I think that every year with Las Calaveras, it offers something new and unique. So I hate when people try to compare it to this one was the best. Yeah. Every year,
it's different every year.
Personally, the one that, the 10th anniversary, I told John.
I agree.
I was wowed by that.
Yeah.
But the whole point is to offer you something new and unique. But everyone wants to compare, 2014, 2015. Yeah. Those were the years. Those were the heyday. And I've told John this before. I remember I was in the store. I worked in the store when the first one came out. And I had just started I think we had 4 kicks on a shelf. We were just starting to. But somebody told me, I'm like, what's this new one with the skull on it? And it's a new My Father cigar. And then I looked into it and I'm like, I guess they collaborated with these Crown Heads guys.
Yeah.
But Periiosa is that cigar.
2014.
It's the 2014 blend and it's been. I think Periiosa came out in 2015. It was the next year.
Yep.
So it's been consistently that blend for 10 years.
Yep.
And I feel like people just weren't giving it any love. I don't know if it was the initial branding. I don't know what it was. Yeah. But it pissed me off because I'm like, you guys are complaining that you want that. 2014 is one of the best cigars ever. He's been making it for you every year as a core line product.
Yep.
So what I was most enthralled by, as was our team when we were at the trade show. John had been sneak peeking me pictures the entire time, but when we actually got to see it in person, and Periiosa was what I was most wowed by.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is going to have the biggest effect.
Yeah.
Because Broadway will sell as Broadway will. It's brand new, so it's up to the gods.
Yep.
I think Mil Diaz you're going to see an increase in, but they're already the Maduro and the Natural are already super strong brands.
Yep.
This is going to give Periiosa an entirely new life.
We saw it at the show. We saw people that are some of our biggest supporters that sell Mil Diaz, Juarez, they still sell 4 kicks. Yeah. And maybe Periiosa just kind of disappeared off their shelf, right? We saw people at the trade show say, that cigar is getting a place on my shelf. The packaging, the look, we know that it's a great cigar. So those things happen in our industry, and I'm very excited to see that for Periiosa. Even Mil Diaz, which is our biggest selling brand. It comes in a Habano and a Maduro. But even that cigar, people would sometimes not know it's ours. They're buying them by the box, and they're not familiar with the name Crown Head. So bringing it all together, linking Periiosa Broadway, Mil Diaz Habano, Mil Diaz Maduro with this new packaging. I'm the same way. John sends me these digital renderings that he's working on, and it looks incredible. But there's nothing like seeing it in person.
Exactly.
And my team, when they got to see it in person, was at the trade show for the first time. They were all blown away, and they were blown away by Periiosa the most.
Yeah.
That color is so unique.
It really, because you were able to take that color that was on the original band, but let's make it shine a little bit more. And you just made me think of something about why I think that this rebrand is going to work even more so is that, it's easy for me or for you or like people who are very, very into like cigar lore and brands and like are constantly on halfway, even, just not necessarily people who work in the industry, but there's a ton of consumers who are like that. They know what all the Crown Head cigars are or all the Foundation ones. But, sometimes you got to take a step back and be like, there's a guy who's walking into a store. They suggested him Mil Diaz. He smoked it. He liked it. And he just goes in and he sees the M on the box. He just buys that box.
Yep.
He has done no further analysis of who makes it, what factory. He doesn't care. It's like, I just like this cigar. Why do I need to go any further than that? So doing this makes it easier for that guy. And that's probably... I think that demographic has shrunk. I think people are more and more in tune because the internet and how everyone's connected. But that's still like maybe 40% of the industry is like, I'm just buying. I know where the box is on the shelf. I just go and buy that box. I don't care about anything else. That was something that Terrence told me when they rebranded Aganorsa was when COVID happened and they had like curbside, a guy would go in and grab your cigars. They had people who like didn't know Aganorsa, like the name. It's just like, it has like an A on it, and it's like kind of in the back shelf. So having the brand recognition is so important because it makes it easier for that 40 or 50% of the people who just like, this is just Mil Diaz is the brand that I like. Don't know who makes it. Don't know who John is. Don't care. So I think that having that connection, you're pleasing the nerds. It's like, hey, we're keeping all the little nuances, we're keeping the story, we're keeping the colors. But also for guys who are just seeing it. I mean, there's going to be people who have been smoking some form of Crown Heads brand that had no idea that we're going to see this rebrand and be like, oh, I had no idea these two things were related. And I've been smoking both of them for 5 years.
Absolutely.
So,
I met a consumer recently on the road, and he was a loyal 4-kick smoker. But he was part of the industry that he just found a cigar he loved. He kept buying that cigar. And it never occurred to him like, man, maybe I like some of the other stuff they did. But he wasn't familiar so much with the name Crown Heads. It was 4 Kicks. And so when I met this consumer, the retailer said, let me introduce you to this guy. So I met him, talked to him. That day, he went home with some Mil Diaz, some Periiosa. And it was his way of saying like, wow. it was his way of kind of saying, look, no offense, I love this cigar, but I didn't know you guys made other cigars. So it was his way of saying, okay, I love this cigar. I'm going to trust you. Pick out some of your other stuff that I could get into and try. And that to me is exciting. I'm on the sales side of this business. All I've ever done, 22 years. That to me is the exciting when you get to introduce to people these kind of brands. And retailers have said it to us. Retailers that are proud to carry Crown Heads. We have over 1,000 retailers in the U.S. carrying our cigars, 13 countries around the world. They want to they're like, hey, this is my Perdomo section. This is my Tatuaje section. I want something that says, a footprint that says Crown Heads, that's CH. And so now they're going to be able to see that. And obviously you're going to see both packaging kind of mixed out there probably for about a year. It takes about a year to kind of go through all that. But a year from now, you're going to walk into a store and you're going to see that Crown Heads section. More brands will come later. We're gonna do Jericho Hill. We're gonna do Tennessee Waltz. We're gonna do 4 Kicks. They're gonna transition over to this new band and new boxes as well. And it's exciting, man. It's exciting to do it. We've seen it with many different brands in this industry. It's just that step you take when you hit a certain point. And we've grown to that point. We have a big sales force. We have a tremendous amount of great blends, and now it's time to kind of bring it all together, man.
No, and I'm so excited. And I'm excited I get to be around for because I wasn't really this deep involved in the industry when Oliva had their moment, or Rocky really had his moment of like, all right, now we're the next tier where we have to do. So it's cool that I get to be around and see like Crown Heads, a company I've been, been very close with you guys for a couple of years now.
Absolutely.
That I get to see like that next step, and I get to cheer you guys on.
Yeah.
How will you be handling LE? Like if you wanted to do another size of blood medicine, will that still just kind of be its own unique thing?
I think for now the LEs are going to remain very unique to what they are, because that is kind of what an LE is, right? It's on the shelf.
It's for the nerd.
It's for the nerd. It's for the guys like us that really get into not only the marketing, but we get into the tobacco, we get into the cigar, and the rarity of different things that we have available. So those will remain the same. Las Calaveras is not going to change. That band is cemented in the industry. And I think that for now, the LEs will remain the same. But I do think maybe upgrading a little bit on quality of packaging.
Right.
We've gone to a different printer now. We're using a printer in Holland, which is considered the best printer in the world. Vrydag is doing all of our new bands for Crown Heads and Oz.
I know that a lot of the guys out there who are listening don't know, but like that means you guys are doing well. You're going to like that.
Yeah. So Vrydag is
something.
based in Holland. They made our bands very early on at CAO or Crown Heads. And it was a thing where we needed bands quicker, and so we switched over to a few other band. And then with this rebrand, it was, who do we get to make these?
Right.
Let's go to the best. And that's those guys in Holland, the Vrydag, and John and Tim both want to make sure these bands are absolutely perfect. The colors, the Pantones are right. And so part of that was moving the band production over to Holland. And so all of our bands, so I think even, next time we do Mother Church or something, upgrading what we're doing, I think that's all of what we want to do. We want to keep, maintain that culture, that style, but maybe upgrade it a little bit. You know what I mean? And that's part of the fun.
I'll tell you though, as someone who's now intimately involved in like this part of the business, the moving of bands, like I'm already starting to sweat. That's because like I know the huge logistical, because just sometimes to get samples is like, all right, well, production time is 11 weeks, but if you want samples to your address, it's going to add through because they got to start the machines and do everything, set everything up to print 100 to send to you. Then they have, by the time it gets, they have to start printing their other stuff, and then you have to get back in the queue. So it's like sometimes it's like, man, am I going to add 3 weeks onto production just to make it, and it's like I said, it makes me, every time Brad is like, oh, I want to move boxes to this new guy, I'm like, oh, man, you just made my life a nightmare. But it is worth it to get, like we're doing a big shift right now to a new box manufacturer for a lot of our private labels, just to make it more consistent, cohesive. And we were ordering a lot of them from China, and even before the tariff situation, you run into this issue. You're getting good quality stuff, but now, after however many years of the industry being alive, you're starting to get that kind of quality stuff in these countries. You're starting to get box manufacturers in Nicaragua, in the DR, that can actually do, glossy or piano finish or this kind of stuff. And listen, 4 weeks on a shipment, I need to do like a half a year at a time. I can hire someone in the Dominican do it. It'll be the same price, even if it's $1 more expensive, but I can call them up. I need 1,000 boxes in 6 weeks, and they can get it.
It just shows you how much the industry has grown. I think, you'd mentioned earlier, I always mention to people, like, people go down to Estto now, and they go to visit factories or whatever. You can get a pizza, you can get some chicken wings down there, you can get some good beer. It's safe to walk around. Look, I remember 22 years ago, it was not that way. Roads were very rough. You weren't getting piano finish on boxes.
No.
Bands were very iffy, if they all would even turn out the same. And those are things that I think consumers, I think is kind of fun to see how much it has grown. Try to get a good meal in Esteli. As an American, you go there. Now it's completely different.
Oh, no, same thing with, like, we went to Honduras. I went to Honduras for the first time last March, and I went with Andy, who's our head business analysis guy here. He's been in the industry. He worked for Specs. He was like their cigar buyer for Specs for years and years. But we were driving to Esteli and through Honduras, and on the way to we're going to Davidoff's factory or Camacho's factory, and he's like, first of all, I had no idea how old Andy was because I thought Andy was like kind of my age. He's like, oh man, they really like done Honduras. This looks great.
I'm
like, oh, when were you here? He's like, oh, I think Rocky took us down here in like 2004. I'm like, Andy, how the fuck old are you? But we had a remarkable time. First of all, it's Davidoff taking, so you get a little bit extra with them. But we ate at some restaurants like in the town. Food was phenomenal. So last time I was in Esteli was probably like 2018, and I know it's gotten even way better since then. So it's become these almost cigar tourist destinations. Incredibly safe. The people are super super nice. I heard that when there was like the initial kind of migration to Esteli, however, 30, 40 years ago, that the Pan American Highway like wasn't even there yet. Like you couldn't. It wasn't just this. Oh, it's a 3-hour drive from Managua to Esteli.
Yeah.
Like they had to take helicopters or do all this stuff just to go there all the time. Which is why guys like Nick or Jonathan like would just live down there. It's like I'm not. This is crazy to come back and forth once a month. I'm just going to stay down here for like a year and get this going.
That's part of the credibility. I think guys like Jonathan Drew, were in Nicaragua when Nicaragua and Esteli was not the safest place to be. And they would stay down there and sleep in the factory. Nick would do that, and that all goes back to the conversation of the new packaging, new bands, all of us continuously upgrading these things because the technology has caught up with what the vision of the cigar makers are. Look, a great cigar, no band in a bundle, tastes just as great in a fancy box. But I learned from Tim Osgener's father. John would say, if you're truly proud of something you create, you want it presented correctly. Right. It's like when you have a kid and you're leaving the house, comb your hair. This kid is a representation of you.
Exactly.
And your representation of your family, your representation of the company you work for. And so when we put out a product, we do want it to be properly presented, right? You go to a steakhouse and you get this beautiful steak, and maybe comes with a few different sauces, and they're put on the plate a certain way. Within a minute of that sitting down, it's going to be a mess on your plate.
Exactly.
But presented correctly. And as we're talking about Honduras, Nicaragua, Dominican, have all really upgraded the bands, the boxes, all the things, even processing of tobacco. I mean, there was a point where Nicaragua was known for really strong, maybe under-fermented tobacco. We're talking 25, 30 years ago. And where it's come now, it's the number one importer of premium cigars in the United States. If you were around in the late 90s, Dominican was number one, Honduras was number two. Nico
had all
was
the
far down the line.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, you really only had, in terms of major brands, you had Padron. Oliva was like doing it, but they weren't. There was no V's or anything yet. Drew was just starting with the acids, so they weren't anything yet. My father wasn't there yet.
Perdomo had a little factory.
Perdomo had a small factory.
There was a factory there called Latin Cigars de Nicaragua that was ran by Fidel Oliva, and no relation to Oliva Tobacco or Cigar Company.
A third Oliva?
There's another Oliva family down there, and Charlie Tarano.
Okay,
And they had that factory, and so there was not a ton going on there. So even talking to some of the old timers in Nicaragua, as some of these new tobacco strains would come out, they had to really learn how to ferment it and how to work it, And now you look at Nicaragua and they're leading the way.
Yeah.
It just shows you the industry is continuously growing and expanding and getting better. And that all goes back to branding, making sure that we are keeping up with the industry as well, making sure that our products are all unison. And we're very proud to present these products because these products only represent Crown Heads and John Huber and Tim Osgener. But they also represent the people that are making our cigars.
Exactly.
The My Fathers, the Ernesto Perez Carrillos, the Tacanixa, the Knoxa. These people are giving us incredible tobacco, incredible products, and working closely with Tim on these brands. We want to make sure that they're on the shelf and they're properly represented to the consumer. Now, Knoxa is a circle.
Knoxa is a great example.
Yeah.
And this is I want to talk about the new Oz before we finish up here. But Knoxa is a great example of talk about the entire, I don't want to say the change of reputation, but that they used to make a ton of our kind of bundle private labels.
Yep.
And I feel like they kind of got pigeonholed into that. And then, when Steve started making his stuff, he obviously he went to where he had the closest relationship, which was at Hoya because he worked for Drew.
Yep.
And they've always been close. And because he was, president of JR for however many years, he went to Knoxa because he knew them. And that started, and then obviously now John's making stuff there. We're going to be doing some, more premium projects with them in the near future, and kind of seeing how that factory has come along. I mean, I still remember walking through. I did a tour of them in 2017, 2016, and just seeing our Easy Eddie bundles.
Yeah.
And now they're
they have some of the best broadleaf in the world.
The factory that has gotten the most top fives on the consensus in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
I would imagine most of them are from Knoxa. Because I even want to say most of Steve's stuff that gets ranked, the Mi Queridas, the black, the Tricky Tracas, all the Papasakas,
Yep.
all from Knoxa.
Yep.
All from Knoxa.
And we're more tied in with them now than ever
Yeah.
before. We've made an LE with them. We made a core brand with them, and now we have Broadway, and we have the new Caratoba from Oz. So we are truly building a very great relationship with Gus Gura down there,
Yeah.
who's the head of that factory. And
Gus is a nice guy.
Yeah, great guy. But you see these factories just grow and grow. The My Father factory, that was just a regular nice looking factory,
Yeah.
and then now they've upgraded to this incredible looking,
Right.
beautiful facility down there. It's very exciting to see.
It is.
And I hope more consumers pay attention to the incredible things that are happening, not just with the cigars, but are happening within the industry.
Because it gives you more appreciation for the product.
100%.
Like if you, I'm not saying you have to be like the total nerd, but like if you read into like a little bit, you gain such more of an appreciation for the product, and it makes your experience more enjoyable. Knowing like what went in to get this here, why John went to this factory, why they decided on, how hard it was to get broadleaf, having broadleaf Broadway, all the things that went into it, it makes it a more enjoyable experience. So the new Oz.
Yeah.
Give me the blend on this one more time, because I can't.
So Nicaraguan fillers with a beautiful Ecuador Sumatra wrapper.
Okay.
The wrapper, the cigar is called Caratoba. That's a new, so Oz Family Cigars, Tim Osgener, family-owned CAO. They started in 1968. The O is Osgener, and CA those are the initials of his father. Mm-hmm. And Tim was part of the founding of Crowned Heads. John came from there. Mike Connor came from there. I came from there. And our CFO, Adam, came from there. Our rep in Texas came from there. So it's kind of the old band, right? They got back together. But Kara in Turkish means dark or black, dark. Toba is a mountain range in the Sumatra region of Indonesia where they grow a lot of tobacco. That seed went from the Americas. Tobacco is native to the Americas. The French, I believe, took it to Indonesia, and they grow some Indonesian Sumatra tobacco there. And eventually it came back to Ecuador, and they're growing Sumatra seed now in Ecuador, right, for a very long time. And so that is the wrapper that is on Caratoba. And speaking of new logos, new bands, Tim has the Bosphorus, the Eremos, the Fursat, very family-driven, kind of the history of his mother and father, their immigration. It tells that story of them coming to the United States. Now, this is kind of setting a new tone, this is Tim's story. This is who Tim is. So again, the band is being made by Vrijdag in Holland. It's made at Knoxa, the factory we were just talking about, where they're making Broadway for us. Just an absolute beautiful cigar that has this beautiful full Sumatra. If you love Sumatra, it has got that in spades. And box press, something that Tim's a huge fan of box press. So it really truly represents kind of Tim's palate. Something that is not overtly full and strong, but a cigar that has a lot of body, a lot of character. And the Kara, being Turkish, his mother was Turkish. His father was Armenian, but born in Turkey. So it hints a little bit to his heritage, but in the Toba kind of hints at the wrapper strain, and the beautiful band, the new OZ logo, really kind of hints at his name, his future, his legacy. And I think that's what's exciting, because it sets a new tone for cigars going forward. You have the traditional family-driven brands, Bosphorus, Eremos, Fursat. Those are highly rated cigars. Bosphorus was a top 25 on many lists. Cigar Aficionados, it was multiple 93 ratings. Eremos 91 rated. I believe the Fursats received 90. So those have all been well received. But this is something that is truly Tim, and I think Tim's story, and this is the future, I think, of Oz Family Cigars.
It is a gorgeous
and
band.
Tim and John are not only longtime friends, but they're business partners with Crowned Heads and Oz Family Cigars. And I think also Tim getting some of the influence from John, his creativity, his uniqueness. It's been a lot of fun to watch those two guys work together. And I think this is a perfect example of something that I am extremely excited to get in people's hands. This is there's something special about this wrapper. It is just gorgeous.
It's
beautiful,
silky smooth.
Very silky smooth.
Very silky smooth.
And very excited. That's what I was smoking when we first sat down. This is a cigar that I love to start the day off with. I'm kind of the opposite. I like to start a little bit fuller and then go milder as the day goes on. Okay. A lot of people like to do milder to full.
Right. An aristocrat, I see.
Yeah, no, I find that if I smoke a strong cigar at night, it's like caffeine.
Yeah, it keeps you up.
Like, it keeps me up. So I do the opposite. Usually the last cigar of the day is the mildest cigar that I'll smoke.
Well, listen, if you're smoking, you guys do this, just as good as anybody, but if you're smoking, even if it's a full body cigar, if it has a cleaner finish, like it's really like it's supposed to, and it doesn't sit on your tongue, you could smoke a full body and then a medium, and then and obviously the nicotine will have different effects on you, but you'll still be able to enjoy each cigar in the way that each one is supposed to. Now, if you smoke just like some kind of old, Villazon Honduran broadleaf thing, it's going to destroy your palate for the rest of the day. And there's some guys who still blend like that on purpose. Like, Steve's, the Mi Querida Black is like supposed to be like these old Hoyos, the old punches, like these heavy, so they sit on your tongue. Yeah. But like, I just smoked the broadleaf on the Broadway, and like, nice clean finish, smooth, creamy, really, really tremendous. I am so excited for you guys, like in the next era, the partnership with Tim, what Tim's got going on with Oz Family Cigars. The new branding, this entirely new style. I'm just so excited to kind of witness it. Now, before we finish up here, I do have one bone to pick with you.
Yes, sir.
As you can see, I get plenty of hats sent to me.
Yes.
But John's the one who sends me hats. Now, from what I understand via Facebook, you're quite the hat creator yourself.
Yeah. I'm a big hat. I'm a big hat guy as well.
And while I have, this hat, and I have Juarez, and I have, the Mother Church one, I don't have any of your hats.
I will send you some of my hats. I will send them out ASAP. I have a little company with my wife and kids. It's called Herencia 21. It's a fun little project, right? Cigars went from my hobby to my career.
Right.
And so I needed another hobby. I need a hobby. So a big part of my hobby is baseball. And I love when I travel to Latin America, doesn't matter if it's Cuba, Nicaragua, Dominican, I'm always trying to catch baseball stuff. Right. And so I'm a big hat guy. Like John. John and I have always bonded over hats from the CAO days. And I was always kind of disappointed in some of the hats that I would find, like the quality of them. Right. So I went ahead and started a little hat company, just my wife and I, and it's a lot of fun. It's more based around baseball, but because there's a hat that says Nica, and there's a hat that says República Dominicana, a lot of people in the industry are picking up these hats because they're loved. Okay, I can make that happen.
I'll take those two. And then if it goes well, I'll consider a Honduras one if you have
a Honduras one. I don't have a Honduras one yet.
Oh, you got it. So that way when I travel to these countries, I can wear that hat and be like, don't worry, guys, I'm one of you.
It's funny because people ask me about Honduras all the time, and I go, well, they're not for cigar. They're baseball. Any country in Latin America that has a baseball league,
baseball,
I do. So Honduras is still a little more into soccer.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I went to, it must have been my first trip to Nicaragua was actually the like Perdomo factory tour, and he takes you and you stay like on the grounds and everything. And then after that, like one of the nights is like, oh, we're gonna go to they have an intramural softball. Like I think it was either softball or baseball. It might have been softball. Yeah. But all the factories, and they have jerseys. So it was like Perdomo versus Drew Estate. Yeah. And then and they got into a fight with the umps in the fifth inning, and they had to cancel the game.
Oh my god.
The crowd was throwing
phenomenal.
Stuff. It was awesome.
That is awesome.
We were like right behind the cage, like behind home plate. And they're all factory workers, so the guys come up and we're like taking pictures of them. They're posing for us, like they're having a great time. Yeah. It was so much fun because they're also like, they're immensely competitive. Yeah. Like these countries, and that's why I love to watch them play. They take baseball
seriously.
Like Central South America, the Caribbean, and Japan take baseball so seriously, and I love watching it. Yeah, I love watching it.
When I was in the Dominican a couple of years ago, I saw one of the rollers at Ernesto Perez Carrillo's Casa Carrillo factory. He had a baseball jersey on that had their logo, and I went right to Ernie and I said, "Brother, just for my personal collection." Yeah. And so, like a couple months later, I showed up to my house with one of their jerseys. I have their jersey in my office. It's pretty awesome.
I love that.
Those are the little fun things that go on behind the industry that are a lot of fun.
But it's those things, like I think Tatuaje might have had like a Nicaragua jersey at one point. They did it's those kind of things that it keeps it fun. Like, listen, at some point, like we all love cigars, we all love creating cigars, smoking them, experiencing them. But at some point, like you gotta add in a little extra zhuzh to just make things a little more fun, a little different. Otherwise, you fall into this like mundane and like. And if you're not having fun doing it, the consumer's not going to have fun with it. So it's like you got to do every once in a while something like that's why I like the hats. It gives John like another creative outlet where like I don't have to care about sales. I can just make a fun hat. I can make it look like the Red Bull logo. Like I don't give a shit. And it gives him his little fun outlet so that he's not totally spent on just the cigar stuff. So it gives him energy for both.
You know, John designed a hat for Tim, Oz hat, that we gave away at the trade show. And the colors were really beautiful. And what it came to was Tim's son is going to Tulane. So John took Tulane University's colors and made an Oz hat for Tim.
That's really cool.
I mean, that is awesome. So we're handing this hat out, and a couple of people said to me, like, oh, I love these colors. Well, here's the story. You know, Tim's son's going to Tulane, so we did an Oz hat to kind of, you know, as an ode to his son's university. And then I had an account in Louisiana come up and say, hey, Miguel, I need one of them. I need one of them hats.
Yeah.
I said, well, you really want one of these? So he said, I'm from Louisiana. I know what those colors mean. You know, and I was like, absolutely, man.
That's the cool part about it is like, even if you do, like if he did one for, you know, Tennessee Waltz or, you know, when Buckeye Land was around, I think there was a Buckeye Land hat. There's going to be, especially in Ohio, but even you know, kind of along like the East Coast, there are going to be people who need that hat.
Yeah.
Like, I need this hat.
Yeah.
And sometimes what I'll do is I have a bunch of friends who are like diehard F1 fans. I watch it occasionally. I just started playing Forza, so I'm getting a little more into it.
Yeah.
But I remember he gave me two of like the Marlboro Racing ones that had the Mil Diaz logo. Their eyes like lit. I'm like, here, man, this belongs with you. Like this is your thing.
That's awesome,
so
man.
He's getting to connect with people on all these other, whether it's sports or just brands. Like Brad loved this one. I gave him one of these ones. This is my golfing hat now. I love this hat.
Yeah.
So he's getting to connect and do these fun things, and so are you with your hat company. And again, it keeps everything alive. It keeps you going to have a little fun side activity.
We work in an incredibly fun industry, and little things like the hats, the cutters, the lighters. Someone creates a cool looking ashtray. It just adds to the fun of what our industry is. And when people are on the outside looking in, they go, "Man, you guys just smoke dead leaves." And then when they get pulled in, they go, "Man, this industry is so much fun." Right. Not take yourself too serious. We're smoking cigars. We're having a good time. Someone creates a cool looking hat or whatever it is. That is the premium cigar industry in a whole.
Yeah. No, it really is. Very well said. Good way to end it, Miguel.
There you go.
Excellent. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to check out all of the Crown Head cigars, but keep an eye out for the new packaging on the Mil Diaz Maduro, La Periiosa, and the brand new Broadway, as well as the new Caratoba from Oz Family Cigars. Should be available soon. June. So right around the corner.
Yep.
But thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And as always, keep it lit.